Hello and welcome, listeners, to That's a Good Card. My name is Yaw, and with me is my Lunar New Year co-host, Kyle, and he's going to have the job of getting me to say, "That's a good card." While Kyle will be doing the convincing, I'll be playing the devil's advocate. Now is also a good time to remind you to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us. If you have thoughts that differ from the two of us, leave a comment below and let us know. Or you can suggest the card you think can change the CEDH meta. All right, Kyle, what did you bring us today?
All right, yeah, thank you for the introduction. Happy Lunar New Year to you as well.
Thank you.
So our card today was recommended to us by the one and only Mike from the Howling Salt Mine podcast. I'll leave links down below. If you haven't listened to the Howling Salt Mine podcast, it is a wonderful Magic the Gathering podcast that you should 100% check out. So check it out below. But Mike's card is Fomori Vault. Now, Fomori Vault is a land, our second land we've ever covered on the podcast. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to Talon Gates and Madara. But Fomori Vault is a land. It enters the battlefield untapped, which is great. We love that in CEDH. It can tap for a colorless mana. And then it has a second ability that's pay 3, tap it, and discard a card. That's part of the cost. So pay 3 colorless mana, tap it, and discard a card to look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. All right, so just to dumb it down, pay 3 mana, tap it, discard a card, look at the top X cards of your library, for however many artifacts you have is what X is equal to, put one in your hand, everything else goes to the bottom. That's it. But it's a pretty cool land. It has an ability that a lot of times when it comes to like the untapped lands, the abilities are pretty weak, I would say. I think that there are a lot of lands that have really powerful abilities when they enter the battlefield tapped, but it's not often that we find a land that has a pretty strong ability that enters the battlefield untapped and can just immediately tap for a mana. I think that's pretty rare. So I'm excited to talk about this card. Let's talk about where this card is seeing play. So it's a relatively new-ish card. It is seeing play in a number of lists: Magda, Urza, Godo, Zuladok, Tameshi, Tivit, Shorkai. Any of the artifact-heavy decks as well, you can see Fomori Vault being played, or at least a sprinkling of it being played. Now, I wouldn't consider this to be a staple by any means.
No.
Not yet, at least.
No.
So I still think it's pretty fringe, which is a great reason for us to talk about this card. I haven't seen it in any recent... I perused through some top 4s in the past 60-plus player tournaments. I didn't see Fomori Vault at all, which is expected for a card that's kind of fringe like this. But I'm excited to talk about it today because I think that this card's got some legs. And after our pod on Talon Gates, I do feel like, I'm not going to take credit for us, pushing the barrier for that card getting a lot more play, but I think that card got a lot more play, at least in my local meta.
That card is so good.
Like, I see it every single tournament now. So sure. I'm hoping that conversation and that card have kind of opened people's eyes to kind of check out other utility lands. Because, in the past, the utility lands haven't been great for CEDH, so I'm just hoping that this one doesn't get a negative stigma, kind of like the other ones that I'll talk about in a bit here. But all right, are you ready to get into my major points?
Please do. Let's do it.
So, my first point is that land bases in CEDH are actually really forgiving in, I would say, 3-color or less lists. And my reasoning why is because all dual lands and all the shock lands and all the fetch lands and all the rainbow lands really get you to your pips the majority of the time. Very rarely have I played a 3-color, 2-color, or monocolored. Obviously, monocolor is not part of this, but 3-color or 2-color lists. And I was like trying to figure out, I was like mana screwed, where I'm like, I can't get the pips that I want. It's really rare. When you have access to shocks, fetches, and all the duels, you're going to be, in the majority of the time, you're going to be put in a position where you can cast the spells that you want to cast, and that's not holding you back. Now, I understand the argument of when you get into 4 and 5 color lists, and I may have brought this up in the Talongates episode as well, because that's also a colorless land. Did we bring it up? Okay,
yeah. We both did.
I mean, it's the same reason. I mean, I think that rings true. If you're going to be playing this card that taps for colorless mana, you have to be confident that the list that you're running, like, you're not going to be missing out on pips. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's just a small distinction. Talongates does give you the ability to filter into it to make colors.
Yeah.
So that is a distinction there that like kind of elevates Talongates, I guess. And I think that was one of your points, was that it does filter you into colors if you need it.
Yeah. And Fomori Vault is explicitly going to just give you colorless mana, kind of similar to an Emergence Zone.
Yep.
So let me rewind a little bit here, because I probably should have put this first. But I kind of wanted to bring up the land, like how I see the tiers of lands in CEDH.
Yeah. Are we doing a tier list? So is this our first tier list?
I think I'm going to rip a tier list here. Yeah. So obviously at the top of the tier list, we have the undeniable staples of CEDH. So I'm not going to count I guess I could put like the fetches and the shocks in here. I don't have it on my list, but the undeniable staples are like fetches, shocks, duels, right?
Yeah.
And then I have Ancient Tomb, Gaia's Cradle, Gemstone Caverns, Command Tower, Beseiju, Otawara, Mana Confluence, and City of Brass. You can probably make the argument for Exotic Orchard in there as well, but I personally am not a big fan. So I think that I put that in the lower tier. What do you think about those undeniable staples? Do you think that's a good list at the top of the tier list, S tier?
Honestly, so far I'm with you. Exotic Orchard is also like one of those.
No, yeah, it's not. It doesn't belong in the undeniable staples.
I agree.
Like the rest of them do. Okay, and then we kind of get into the next tier, which I have marked as the deck specific good lands. Super descriptive there.
Okay, yeah.
So my thought process on these are like the lands that are really, really, really powerful in one specific deck, or like that mesh well with that one specific deck. So for me, it's like in Magda, it's the tap a creature lands. Like it's the lands that can just tap a dwarf.
Yep.
I think that those are like really cool.
Yep.
In like Kinnan, Treasure Vault. Like, obviously, Treasure Vault in Kinnan is way better than in any other deck.
Agreed.
Great. Awesome. That makes sense. And then something like, I don't know, like an Arena for Glory, or Arena of Glory, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
The land that gives haste for big Narset. I think that like, if your deck is literally play Narset, swing with Narset, like, yeah, you should have a land that gives haste.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like, those kind of deck-specific good lands are pretty cool. Like Cradle, is already in the S tier, but like I think like Cradle for Derevi, like those kinds of lands. Cool. Underneath that is where I have bond lands. So the lands that aren't fetchable. So those are like the Sea of Clouds, Morphic Pool, Luxury Suite, Spire Garden, Bountiful Promenade, Vault of Champions, Training Center, Undergrowth Stadium, Spectator Seating, and Rejuve Springs. So those are all the dual lands that enter untapped if you have 2 or more opponents.
But they can't be fetched. They're not fetchable.
But they're not fetchable because they don't have those types. Yeah. So that's next on the list for me. And then I think after this, like I think the bond lands, depending on how high your colors are. So like if you're in a 3 color or less list, I think the bond lands are on the same level as the following lands that we see in CEDH often. Are you ready? This is the tier that I think Fomori Vault can kind of rub shoulders with. So we have Cephalid Coliseum, Talongates, Minamo, Surveil lands.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The good MDFCs. I've separated them from the bad MDFCs.
Okay, yeah.
So the good MDFCs. And then Tarnished Citadel, Spire of Industry, E-Zone, and then asterisk in non-crop rot decks. So if it's in a crop rot deck, I know there's so many tiers to this, but if it's in a crop rot deck, it's a little higher. But anyway, so that's my list, and then Fomori Vault right there, rubbing shoulders with those. And then underneath that, in like we don't see it very often, but there's sometimes there, I have like War Room and Gaia Reach Sanitarium, which both suck. So don't play those in CEDH.
I'm going to give a caveat for Gaia Reach.
Say it. Oh,
Gaia Reach did stop somebody's win the other day. And I do think that we may actually see Gaia's Reach a little bit more. It's a land. I'm building I'm just like tinkering around with a Hashen, and because it did like you draw and then discard, it's like, and it can stop if needed a Thassa's Oracle win.
Yeah, and I understand why it can be good. And for the listeners who don't know what Gaia Reach Sanitarium is, it's a land. It taps for a colorless, just like Fomori Vault. It has another ability, pay 2 colorless and tap it. Each player draws a card, then discards a card.
Most of the time, I agree with Kyle, it is bad. But there are times in a deck when you don't need the colors.
Look, yeah, I think people see it a lot as a silver bullet against Thassa's. Like there's a sect of people in CEDH that hate Thassa's Oracle and wish it were banned. I think those are the Gaia Reach Sanitarium players.
I would not put it in my list willingly.
Because if you're in blue, like, and you're trying to stop Thassa's win, Cephalid Coliseum's way better. Just gonna throw that out there. But anyway, that's kind of my tier list right now. What do you think of it?
No, I think I agree with it. I think that actually wouldn't have even broken it up as much as you did, and so I kind of like that. Okay. Like you broke it up even more than I think I would have. Yeah. So the argument that I'm going to try to make today is not like this Fomori Vault should be slotted into every single deck that's ever existed. Yeah. I think that the argument to be made is that it belongs in the conversation with those middling C-tier lands for CEDH. That I said before, the Surveils, the good MDFCs, the Tarnished Citadels, the Spire of Industries, the Cephalid Coliseum, the Talon Gates, that range right there. Just a little bit below the Bond lands. And you know what? If you're getting a little spicy, getting a little frisky with Fomori Vault, I wouldn't mind you taking out a Bond land for a Fomori Vault. Why not? I took out a Bond land for Talon Gates in my Corvold list, and I have never looked back. I think it's incredible. So I think that Bond lands aren't too far above that, as long as your list isn't 4 or 5 color. Yep. Cool. Let's go back to my points. I'll leave that in. I'm leaving that in. Rewind. So my second point, after my first point, which is, first point, our land bases are great. Because our land bases are great, we can afford to run a land that doesn't give you a pip. My second point, and this is one that Mike brought up in our conversations, when he brought this card to me, and he said, this card's an absolute banger. He says that it is a really good card to play against Opposition Agent, Orcish Bowmasters, anything else on the board that is going to punish you for attempting to draw cards or search your library. This card can be really powerful to maneuver around those effects. And I kind of want to throw this into this second point as well. So I think personally that Opposition Agent is the best place it's been in CEDH in this meta in a long time. And hear me out. One of the reasons why is because Magda and Sisay are both really powerful right now. I think I'd give an edge to Magda in terms of tournament results. It is performing really, really well. I see Magda a lot in the past tournaments that I've been playing in. So I think with Magda being really powerful and Sisay still having legs, I think I would put Sisay in a tier, maybe a tier and a half below Magda. But at the same time, it still can hang. It can still win in CEDH games. I think that people are incentivized to play Opposition Agent. And this card helps break that parity when an Opposition Agent is on the field. Honestly, in the same sense of that, it also, like I said, or like Mike said, works through Orcish Bowmasters as well. If instead of drawing cards and feeding that Orcish Bowmaster, you're effectively picking up a chunk of your deck to look through and then put a card into your hand, right? So you're maneuvering around that. And then the last thing is, it's kind of cool in terms of interaction with Oof. Hear me out. When an Oof is on the board, people don't mind you getting treasures. So if you have a Smothering Tithe out and there's an Oof on the board, no one's ever going to pay for your Smothering Tithe. You're just going to accumulate these treasures. And we've all been in those scenarios where you're sitting there
with 15, 20 treasures. This is Magic Christmas Dreamland, right? There's an oof on the board, and you're like, no one is paid. Everyone thinks you're useless because you have all of these useless treasures, right? It used to happen a lot more when Dockside was a thing, and people would dockside into Docksides when oof was out, so then people would just have like 30 treasures. But now that that's not a thing, it still can get into a place where you have, let's say, respectfully, 10 treasures that are all locked down. Now, with Fomori Vault, those treasures are really useful because you're picking up a chunk of your deck and you're just picking whatever card you want out of them, right? And the effect is especially effective because we're in CEDH, baby. All of the cards in our deck are good cards. That's what we want. So whether you're picking up, in a casual deck, I think this card is significantly worse. I would make the argument. You could say, oh, well, in a casual deck, you don't have as much card draw, so like you're feeding into it, so it kind of gives you card draw. Well, guess what? In a casual deck, if you're, picking up 4 cards and you put one in your hand, there's a chance that they suck. Or there's a chance that they're not what you're looking for, right? Where in CEDH, if you get a chance to look at 4 cards, like, damn, it's like gas number 1, gas number 2, gas number 3, gas number 4. Awesome. Oh, wow, I got great choices. So I'm kind of derailing from my second point. My second point is it just works and maneuvers great around the board state that this mid-range hell is going to take you into, whether it's Oppo, Oof, OBM, whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
I think what I also like about this card is it gets around the rare, but every now and then, Aven Mind Sensor.
Yep.
Again, you're not searching, right? You're looking, and normally Aven Mind Sensor would limit a search to the top 4 cards, where this can dig you deeper than that, right? Again, depending on where the game state is, I think that you're absolutely right. I definitely think the more powerful part is definitely the getting around the Orcish Bowmaster pings, for me at least, just having played like a Magda and whatnot. Like, it's just, you can use this to dig.
Yeah, if in the lists like Magda that are super susceptible to like a singular OBM ping, or a list like Timna Thrasios where they're protecting that Bloom Tender with their life.
Right.
Sometimes it's just not safe to activate Thrasios.
Right.
If there's an OBM on the board.
Yep.
But if it's not safe to activate Thrasios, it is safe to activate your Fomori Vault. So I think it's pretty interesting where there's always these nightmare board states that the CDH decks that we're playing run into.
Yep.
So for like a Timna Thrasios that's running off dorks, that could be an OBM out. For a Magda or a Sisse, it's that opposition agent out. For a Smothering Tithe focused deck, let's say, I don't know, something like a Kenrith that really thrives off just making a ton of mana. Like, yeah, you're not going to want to see an oof out there. I know the Kenrith, specifically Atlas, if he's listening, is probably like, nah, take the game as long as possible. I love oof. but at the same time, like, there's an argument to be made that there are inhibiting effects that will affect one CEDH deck more than other decks, and Fomori Vault almost seems like a get around for all of them.
I agree with that.
That's my second point.
Yep.
Third point is another one that Mike mentioned to me, which it was like a part of a point that he mentioned, which is that I personally think that control lists that hold up mana can really get a lot of value out of this card. And specifically, I just mentioned it, but something like a Thrasios. Things that are going to be holding up mana can use this at the end of their turn. So like, let's say you're holding up mana for interaction. You're saying to yourself, hey, I can get this extra value. And, you're a Thrasios. Now, instead of Thrasios activating because, an OBM is on the field, you're getting that same value with the mana that you were holding up anyway. Very similar to any control list, really. If you're gonna save your mana to do something at the end, why not give yourself an option? Like, let's take Kenrith, for example. Why not give yourself an option to do many different things with the mana that you're holding up and keep your opponents guessing rather than just have your opponents be sitting there thinking like, okay, I'm not really worried because at the end of his turn, he's holding up 4 mana. It's probably just going to activate Thrasios, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now you have to think to yourself, well, he could activate Thrasios or could activate a Fomori Vault. How many artifacts do they have? Oh, 6? Okay, that's kind of scary. I just like the idea of giving yourself options when you're holding up mana anyway, and you might not be able to, progress your board state, whatever. This card could give you something to do to try to dig yourself out of a hole.
Agreed.
So, cool. And then my last point, which is my fun point, which is low-key spoiled by Ya, which is, I think this card is going to slap in Hasheton.
Yeah.
So I think that this is like, at any land that's just going to let you discard something is going to be really powerful in that deck. So for those of you who haven't seen the spoilers for this card, Hasheton is an Esper commander. So it costs 1 white and 1 black pip. It's a legendary creature zombie wizard. It's a 1/3. And it reads, whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue. If you do, create a tapped token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Wowza. So, super powerful to be able to bin whatever big, incredibly menacing creature you'd like to get back with Hashen. Whether it's a Kant Sphinx, Hullbreaker Horror, a Razaketh, take your pick your poison.
Mm-hmm.
It's all going to be really powerful. And in that list, you're going to want to make sure that you have many ways to get what you want in the bin.
Yep.
Excited for that. Another fun thing that I was going to mention, when I read Fomori Vault for the first time, the first thing that came to mind, I was like, Fomori? Like, what is that from in the MTG universe? And then I realized that Fomori Nomad is a card printed in Future Sight.
Cool.
And this
card.
was, so I started playing in Future Sight. Time Spiraler, Future Sight-ish, right?
Yeah.
And I remember having a copy of Fomori Nomad, and it's like this full art. I'll put it up on the screen for listeners if you don't know what this card is. It's like full art Future Sight border. It's a 5-drop, 4 and a red for a 4/4. And that's it. It's just a Nomad giant. And I just remember thinking, it's just a big beater. I loved it.
Yep.
It's just the best thing ever. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, I wonder if this vault is this Nomad's vault. It's his goodies. But anyway, I don't know. It's not a point at all. I just wanted to bring up that Fomori Nomad is a cool card. At least 8-year-old or 11-year-old Kyle, however old I was. Yeah, I don't know how old I was. Thought it was really cool. All right, yeah, those are my points for Fomori Vault. I'm ready to hear the downsides, and it better not be colorless land bad.
No, I don't think so. I mean, let's get into it.
Let's rock.
Yeah, let's walk into it.
What you got?
No, I don't think it's just because it taps for colorless. I did look at my notes for Talingits because I felt like my arguments for that might be a little bit similar here. And like we mentioned earlier, this doesn't let you filter for colors. And I do think that Kyle's right overall, like that. For the most part, anything 3 color and below, you'll probably be able to get away with something like this. But you do really want to consider what you're removing for this and like take a look at your land base, right? I think that's probably where I know that Kyle has really spent more time looking at his land base just because he's playing a Landfall's Corvold deck, and so he's much more like in tune with what his deck's going to need in terms of pips, right? But don't just kind of like willy-nilly pull out like a basic mountain when you need that basic mountain, right? Like really take a look at your overall land base when you're doing this.
There's levels to land building. I think a trap that a lot of CEDH players fall into early on, and it's one that I fell into as well, is when you're building a list and you kind of like, most people, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure you've done this, you build the list and you're like, I want to build this commander. You go search up someone's list that played this commander, did well with the commander. And then you start picking it apart, taking out stuff that you don't like and putting in stuff that you like, and then you don't touch the land base. You don't even think about the land base. Yeah. You're just like, whatever. That land base seems good. I'm going to trust them. I don't know how I want to fix that. Like, that's a very common thing.
Very common.
That people do. And I think once you kind of realize that the land base is built with a purpose for what you're trying to actively find, especially there's a difference between building the land base for your early game and making sure that your game plan can progress versus just a simple fraction formula of this is what my, these are the pips that I have. These are how many of each I need to have. So I mean, I love digging into land bases now, especially being in that Landfalls list. I've been just recently making a big move to include a couple of basics in my Landfall Corvold lists because I really wanted a Prismatic Vista. Another fetch land to trigger Nissa. So I was working with multiple people asking opinions on this land base just to try to make sure that it's balanced. So be very careful with how you're swapping a land out for this card and really make sure that you're not hamstringing yourself in terms of your pips.
Yeah, I mean, another way to think about it is, like, let's say you've done the common thing where you took out, let's say you're in a Rakdos deck, right? and you took out a bunch of like red cards, and then all of a sudden you added in a bunch of black cards with more black pips. So when you go to your land base now, you may be thinking you should be thinking about, I need to add more black producing mana in some capacity, right? Maybe rather than red. So this probably shouldn't be, and that's why I think I liked that Kyle ranked this down towards like that 4th tier, right? Where you should be looking at that first tier, second tier first. What is going to produce you those pips? And then after you've gotten that down, cool. That's where you're going to look for this type of land.
Yeah, and you also can't get baited by CMC as well in CEDH when you're building your land base, because something like Moxfield, for example, will show you the pip correction of like what the cards that you're running is, but you have to realize that, like, especially for blue, like, be careful, because it's going to overshow how many blue pips that you actually need, because things like Mind Break Trap, Force of Will, Force of Negation, those are all pip heavy cards, but you're not actually casting them for those pips. So even though it's showing you like, holy crap, your deck is super blue pip heavy, like, be careful, because those actually aren't. So understand what cards you're actually casting for free, and don't let something like a Colossal Sky Turtle mess with your pip count, because you're not actually going to be, casting. Well, that was a bad example, because both channels are green and blue, which you would balance, but it's fine. Yeah. You get what I'm saying. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Cool. What's your second point?
My second point is, like, I think that this is one of those lands, and you have to be careful here again. I'm going to go back to my first point a little bit. This is one of those lands that I don't think feels as great early game as it does late game, right? This is one of those lands I will concede, late game, I'm pretty stoked to see this in my hand. Normally, you don't want to draw cards, but at that late point, you may be just like, oh, crap.
I can't think of a better, like, turn 6 land drop in the CEDH, like, Hellscape than this card. It's great.
Early game, though, when you are trying to develop that early land base where Kyle said earlier, right? Like, when you shouldn't have trouble making the colors you want. But if you draw this, an Ancient Tomb, and like, I don't know, like a City of Traders, right? All you're going to produce for the first couple turns is
praying. You have one ring in your hand,
right? Yeah, you're stoked on that.
You're be praying.
You're stoked on that, but that might not be the best game plan if you don't have anything else, right? And so be careful with that.
It's unfortunate, but the colorless land base will potentially put you in more cases where you're snap mulliganing. Yeah. It just sucks, but that's just the way it is. If you can't cast your bop on turn 1 because your Fomori Vault doesn't tap for a green, maybe this hand's not keepable anymore. Sucks to suck, but that's just how it is.
And so that leads me into my last point, which is, what do we cut for this? And I think that Magic's going to continue to produce more great utility lands, right? Now we've got Italian Gates this just within this last year. We've got this Fomori Vault, which only came out during the Big Score, right? Like,
or is it Big Score?
The Big Score, which
is that the same thing?
It is like that weird like subset, like it's like a
it's not an actual DLC block almost. They got rid of those.
Right. It's almost like a DLC to Outlaw. It's called the Big Score. Yeah. It was a smaller set, so we don't see as many of these cards. So most people kind of like glazed over this. That set, and so they kind of glazed over this as a land.
Yeah, 100%. When I Googled the Big Score, I know I would just Google the Big Score while I was looking, and I found this Reddit post, and everyone in the comments is so confused, and they're asking the same questions we are. They're like, what is
this?
You?
What is
what is this? Anyway, my rebuttal for it is, let's do it. I'm ready. You want to play a game?
Let's play a game.
I'm going to throw out a couple lands, and you're going to have to pick. Okay. So Fomori Vault or blank.
Okay.
Start you off with a layup. Fomori Vault or War Room?
Fomori Vault.
Yeah, that's who's
playing War Room in CEDH.
I just imagine Mike listening to this pod, just fist bumping in his car, like, yeah, let's go. 1 point Fomori Vault. Okay. Here's a fun one. Fomori Vault or Shifting Woodland?
Wow, what commander am I playing?
Ooh, yeah, I knew you were gonna ask that question. We'll go generic. I don't think you'll ever see it in a TNT, but we'll do TNT.
Ooh, jeez. That's hard. That's a really difficult one. I think most people would say Shifting Woodlands. I think.
But what do you say?
Depends on whether or not
Screw what
I
the
want to
people
play
say.
Hermit Druid or not. If I'm playing Hermit Druid, then yeah, maybe. But and Timon Thrasios is 4-color.
Yeah, I don't like this. We're doing in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We're not going to do on just individual decks. In a vacuum, where you got just power level, off vibes alone, Shifting Woodland or Fomori Vault. Because just like how you can say, look, Shifting Woodlands and Landfall Corval is incredible because it's a combo piece, you could say Fomori Vault is incredible in Zuladoc because he runs 50 artifacts, you know?
I'm going to say between Shifting Woodlands and Fomori Vault, in this case, I'm going to go with Shifting Woodlands. Because a point I didn't write down, but I was thinking during our conversation is that I don't know if I would run this in mono green. And because you brought up Oof, right? If I'm running Oof in mono green, chances are I'm not relying on artifacts anyways. And so I'm not going to have the artifacts to make this that worthwhile. Mono red,
I agree with that.
I run this over a lot of other lands. Like mono red, like this thing slaps, I think.
Okay. Fomori Vault or Hydroelectric Specimen, the MDFC.
I'm going to have to go ahead and Google that one. So we're going to go ahead and say Fomori Vault.
Yeah, so I'll read it for the listeners.
Yeah, please.
I'll read it for the listeners. So it's an MDFC land. The back is obviously a blue land that enters the battlefield, pings you for 3, right? It just taps for a blue mana. The other side of Hydroelectric Specimen is a flash creature for 3 mana, 2 and a blue. It's a 1/4. It says when Hydroelectric Specimen enters the battlefield, you may change the target of target instant or sorcery spell with a single target to Hydroelectric Specimen. So it's kind of like a spell skite.
Okay.
With flash.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Oh, no. Fomori Vault all day for me.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Okay. Fomori Vault or your second Surveil land in a list.
I wouldn't run a second Surveil on Fomori. I personally.
Dang, okay.
I don't know if I like that many tap lands. I'm just saying.
Fomori Vault or 1 Surveil land. Ooh, we've got you thinking deep in your bag.
I'm going to think deep in the bag on that one.
And it's hard because it's like in a vacuum. You know what I mean? It's like Reanimator list. You're probably like, yeah, Surveil lands.
I probably go with the Surveil land because I like the Surveil land early. I like that it's going to tap me for a color. And I do think that that's rather important depending on what colors I'm in.
I like that the pity party that a Surveil land provides for you when you have to mulligan to 4.
Yep.
And your only land is Surveil land, but that's okay because you don't have a turn 1 action anyway.
Anyways, yeah.
That's just a little, it's like a little, like I imagine the Surveil land is like somebody who shows up at your birthday party, but they're the only one at the party and they blow one of those, is it a kazoo? What's the thing that like shoots out, like it rolls out and it goes like,
a party blower? Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't think of the name, but I'm just going to say party blower.
Really
no.
No
oh
way.
My gosh.
No way. It's called I'm laughing too hard.
Well,
is it actually?
When you look it up,
it is called a party blower.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay. It is called a party blower. Wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. The fact that you know
I'm old.
what that's
I'm
called.
old.
You used to work at Party City.
Yeah. I'm old.
I'm just kidding. But that's the Surveil lens when you have a crappy mulligan. That's my thought process on it. But I'm glad Fomori Vault could hang with some of those. Let's move on. What is your next point?
That was it. Those are my points.
Okay.
I think we're ready.
Not bad. All right. I'm glad we got to play a little bit of a game there.
A game.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm still laughing at the fact that you knew it was called a party blower. There's no way that anybody else knows what that's called. But
people at Party City or whatever party thing in your region,
Party City enjoyers will know what that's called. But anyway, all right, y'all. What point of mine did I make was the best reason for why you should be testing Fomori Vault in your list?
I think that the fact that it gets around Oof and Orcish Bowmaster, right? Like I think that it lets you dig, doesn't draw you a card, right? And Oppo, right?
I feel like Oppo is the biggest out of all of those. In my head, it's like Oppo 1, OBM 2, Oof 3. You see it differently?
I see it as OBM, then Oppo,
1.
then
Oh,
Oof.
interesting.
For me.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy dorks.
Yeah, I dork. Wait. Oh my gosh. Kyle, what point of mind do you think supports why you wouldn't run this card in your deck?
Probably just like the idea of like you're absolutely right. They're printing so many cool lands, and there are a lot of hype utility lands right now. I think like I agreed with you when we played our game, and it's so hard because like every single list, I want to play all of these utility lands. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners do too. And that's probably why they tuned into this in the first place, is because they want someone to tell them, like, shake their head and be like, yes, play Fomori Vault. Yes, break your perfect land base to play a Fomori Vault. But it's so hard because, like, I love Surveils. Like, when we go through the tier that I brought up earlier, let me pull it back up.
Yeah.
Go back to my notes. Crazy listeners. I actually take notes sometimes. You wouldn't have thought. When I looked at the notes, it's like Cephalid Coliseum. I literally just made a social media post about how I think Cephalid Coliseum is underrated and it should be played more. So, like, obviously I'm high on that card. Talon Gates is my absolute baby. It's like one of my only removal pieces in my lands build. So, like, I'm crazy high on that card. Surveil lands, I like them a lot. I don't love them, but I like them a lot. I would never play 2. I think there's some lists that are on 2. Some people like them way more, and obviously are playing 2. That's fine. Yeah. Do your thing. I think it's kind of in a place where I would play this over Tarnished Citadel and Spire of Industry because I hate those cards.
Me too.
Even in 4 or 5 color lists, they feel like shit.
I agree.
I don't care if you're playing 14 artifacts. Sometimes those lands just suck.
Yep.
They just straight up suck.
Yep.
So I think that if you are playing Tarnished Citadel and Spire of Industry, like sure, you can try Fomori Vault. The problem is, like, I've already cut those from my lists.
So yeah, what do you cut?
So what do I cut? Exactly.
What do you cut?
It's so hard. Honestly, since we brought this to the pod, I will give everybody the pass to be able to take out Talon Gates and test Fomori Vault.
Ooh.
I'll give you the pass.
Jeez, I don't know.
As the number 1 Talon Gate stand in the world, I'll give you the pass to test. That's it. Just to test. Anyway, if you're on Tarnished Citadel or Spire of Industry, sure, cut those cards to it. If you're just one of those people who run a basic for fun, because like they think that they're going to get Path to Exiled often, maybe you can try this instead of that basic.
Yeah.
I don't know. Check your pips. But yeah, I don't know.
Check your pips.
Check your pips. Anyway, all right, y'all. It is time. Yeah. Have we convinced you? Is Fomori Vault a good card?
I have personal experience with this card. I have played it. I played in Magda, which I think it slaps in. I love this card. I love this land, right? I do think, I think this is a good card. For sure.
No.
I really do. But I'm going to throw it out.
We did it. Uh-oh. Are you putting an asterisk
on
this?
No.
You putting a caveat?
I'm not going to throw in a caveat on this. I think this is just a banger good land. I really do. I do think that you can't really play this in Corval.
Oh, no. I can't.
Right. Yeah. Like, that's the
Why
thing.
Do you think
like,
I never mentioned it?
Yeah. Like,
Why do you think I never mentioned it? Nah.
Yeah.
I don't ever have mana held up. I will never hold up 3 mana.
Sometimes he has no board state.
On a razor's edge.
Yeah sometimes he has no board state.
Edge every single turn to get perfect mana to do the things that I'm doing. There's no chance, no shot.
If you're in a deck like that, even though I'm actually really high on this card, I don't think you can play this.
What's interesting is you play Magda the most control-y that I've ever seen any Magda player play.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you are not a turbo Magda player. You are full control mode. You don't really care to think about, I need to jam a win now. You just play super control. So I think it's funny that you think Fomori Vault is so gas, because I just talked about how this is a control mindset card.
Yeah.
You don't mind holding up mana. You're just gonna police the board. I'm
going to police the board. I'm going to wait because my dwarf is a 2/1 who's going to get obliterated. That's why I'm very mindful of the Orcish Bowmasters, right? I think that if you're not that type of player, this might not be your type of card, right? Because doing this main phase kind of sucks, right? You've now spent three mana to get another card, and you may need that 3, again, late game, 3 extra mana might matter.
PSA to the CEDH players out there, I don't care if you have no other actions to take. Do not do this main phase. Make people think.
Yeah, you're holding
that
up
you
for
have
something
to do. Like, make people think you have something. Do not main phase Fomori Vault. That is a PSA to all.
Yeah.
Like, do not do that. Unless you have, like, an absurd amount of mana and an absurd amount of artifacts, and you know you're going to get the perfect piece. But that's super rare.
For sure.
All right. It is time for our favorite closing segment.
That's a good card, question mark?
Wow, that was a pretty high octave for you. Yeah, you have a very deep voice.
Thanks.
All right, y'all. If you haven't played this game with us, what we do is will be providing the name of an obscure magic card to me, as well as you, the listener. And it's going to be our job to guess everything about that card. Color, type, cost, power, toughness, art, flavor text, everything. All right, go ahead and give us our card for this week. And listeners, don't forget to pause and guess everything about it. And write your guess in the comments below. It helps us out, especially on YouTube. Pump those comment sections up for us, please. Whoop, whoop. All right, what's the card?
The card I have for you today is Tiger Claws.
Tiger Claws.
Tiger Claws. Exactly like, not like Santa Claus, but like your cat has claws.
Wow. All I can think about is Shaolin Showdown's Golden Tiger Claws. And I don't know if you ever watched that animated show.
I did. I totally did.
I didn't have cable growing up, so I had to watch that show. And the Golden Tiger Claws. Oh man, let me see if I can remember what those did. I think those are the ones that make portals.
Yeah, I think
it's like they slashed the air and they would jump through and it would be like a portal. Oh, I'm thinking Tiger Claws. Okay, so art. I'm going with the art first.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be a set of Golden Tiger Claws.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hot.
They're going to be an artifact, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
3 mana artifact for the Tiger Claws. Equip 2. The Tiger Claws will read, equipped creature gains haste, and when it attacks, equipped creature can deal damage equal to its power to any other creature. So it's like Golden Tiger Claw slashing, teleporting behind the creature, saying nothing personal, kid, and then killing the creature. That's my thought process.
Is that the flavor text? Nothing personal, kid.
Yeah, that's the flavor text. The flavor text reads, nothing personal, kid.
Holy shit, that's so good. Oh my god.
Pushes glasses up. Nothing personal, kid. Anyway, that's it. I already did the artwork.
Yeah,
all right.
you did the artwork.
Yeah, what are we rocking with here?
I'm not gonna lie, as soon as you started talking about what it does after you equipped it, I was like, I know exactly what he's gonna say. It's gonna be this thing plus it's gonna do damage. I was like, oh my gosh, I can feel your thinking.
So that means I was right?
Tiger Claws is 3 cost. It is 2 and a green. It's a green card. And it's an enchant creature.
Oh, it's an aura.
It's an aura.
Okay.
It says, you may play Tiger Claws anytime you could play an instant. So, flash. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has trample.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And it says, the flavor text is Cho Aram, martial artists, emulate the beasts of their home. So I do feel like you were really close with the whole martial arts theme because it's a picture of...
Oh, the art is sick.
Yeah, with like a morphed tiger claw slashing at somebody else. I really actually quite dig the art on this card. I think
that's
it's great.
Really cool art. The only thing that weirds me out is like the elbow situation going on.
Yes, it's
artwork.
weird. It's like engorged. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's an engorged elbow.
For sure.
On this Tiger Claws artwork.
Did you read Animorphs?
I'll put it up on the screen. Yes, obviously I read Animorphs.
That's what this reminds me.
Animorphs energy. Yes. This whole podcast is just a throwback to Shaolin Showdown and now Animorphs. Oh my god.
We'll talk about Goosebumps in a month.
Oh, those were the best. I loved Goosebumps, especially the ones where you had to like choose your fate at the bottom of every page and then go to the next one. Those are the best books ever. Okay. Anyway. All right, listeners. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on Fomori Vault. And thank you, Mike from the Howling Salt Mine.
Thank you.
For today's recommendation. Woo woo. Thank you, Mike. All right, listeners, now's the time to check out our links in our description down below. There'll be a link to our link tree where you'll find all the places where we host our podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, as well as links to our Patreon, as well as our Discord. If you're interested in additional Tag C content, check out our Patreon. We have a bunch of bonus content there, extra podcasts, extra mini podcasts, and soon, I'm holding myself to this, I'll be putting up some mulligans and gold fishing videos.
Hell yeah.
For those of you who are interested in seeing, it's going to be only Corvold, so this is only for the Corvold pilots out there, but because that's what I want to do, so I'm going to do it. So if anyone's interested in seeing my thought process for gold fishing different Corvold lists, check out the Patreon. I'll have those up hopefully within the next month. But cool. All right, thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and we will see you next Monday. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Golden Tiger Claws. Whoosh.